the current Daf, Mesechtes Megillah Daf Chavtes, begin on the bottom word on Daf Chavtes Mevez, where we continue the discussion regarding the chashivas of learning Torah and what do we stop learning Torah for. Which is corresponds to Bekaz and Cheskel Tarnitim Daf Chem was running of today's Daf. Some of the things we discuss in today's Daf are Mevat Tamad Torah, Leitzos Hames, Ulachnas Kal. We don't stop learning for anything. The only two things we stop learning for is for attending a funeral or a wedding. Kapadraya, when is it permitted to use a shul as a shortcut? Dal parashas, to order the 4 parashas read during Chodesh Adar. Parashas Shkalim, many halachas regarding the reading of Parashas Shkalim, including Rosh Chodesh Adar Shekalis B'Shabbos, if Rosh Chodesh Adar falls on the Shabbos. As Karban Ilachmi and Kisisa, whether we read about the Karban Tamid and Parashas Pinchas, which describes what the Shkalim were used for, or the donation for the Shkalim in Parashas Kisisa, is a machlekes what is actually Parashas Shkalim. Kalis be'va'at tetzaba. If Parashas Shkalim falls in the week of Parashas Tetzaba, which is immediately followed by Parashas Kisisa, which is what we read in Parashas Shkalim, so how is the reading of Parashas Shkalim done the week before? Do we read over the same thing again? And what's a chalis b'chisisa atzma? What happens if Parashas Shkalim falls in the week of Parashas Kisisa, which we were going to read anyways? So then how do you read Parashas Shkalim if Parashas Shkalim is that of Parashas Kisisa? And finally, say the parashas u'chayzer, whether we read the Daled parashas instead of the usual Torah reading, or we only change the mafter and the haftarah, but we keep the laning of that of the Seder HaShavua, of the weekly reading. So we begin the current Daf Chav Chesem based the bottom words of Tanur Rabbanan. Learn the Brayso. And that we continue the top of Chav Chesem and Aleph. Mevatim Tamad Torah, we stop the learning of Torah for 2 things: Leitzos Hames, to take out a dead person, Ulachnas Kala, and to bring the Kala from a father's house to the place where the chuppah is going to be. And interestingly, Places brings a story in Masechet Derech Eretz that Rabbi Kiva found a mess mitzvah on the road, and he carried the mess 4 mil until he brought it to the cemetery. When he came to his Rebbe's Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg, he told him what happened. He said, for every step you took, it's like as if you spilled innocent blood. Places explained that wasn't because he stopped his learning, because you're supposed to move up on Talmud Torah like Tzas. Rather, it was a mes mitzvah. The mes mitzvah is koine b'koine. You're supposed to bury a person that has no one to bury him right there where he is. And every step, therefore, is like Kiddush Shafach Adam Naki. But regarding Bittul Torah, that's not a problem, because like we're saying over here, you stop learning for Tzas Hames, for Levaya, and for Chnas Kala, and for the wedding, bringing the Kala from a father's house to the Chuppah. Now, Amr Laval Rabbi Yehuda Bar Loki, they said regarding him, that everything he learned day and night, but he stopped learning Leitzos Hames to take out a dead person, to bring in the bride. Now, when do we say this? B'she'inshim called tzarka, only if they don't have enough people. Yeshim called tzarka, but if there's enough people, then you don't stop your learning for Leitzos Hames. Now, b'kama called tzarka, how many people do you need to have? He says, today's alfa gavri, 12,000 men, v'shita alfa shipuri, and 6,000 people who blow trumpets. That's how many people you need to have at a Levaya. If they don't have that amount, you have to stop learning. If they do, then you don't stop learning. Some say, today's alfi gavri, 12,000 men, uminayu shita shipuri, not 18,000, 12 plus 6, but from the 12,000, 6 of them should be blowing trumpets. That's how much you need to have. If they have that amount, then you don't stop learning for that. Ula Amar, he gives a different qualification. It says, says if you have like a partition of men, Ma'avula, from the gate of the city, ad sichra, until the cemetery, because they used to have the cemeteries beyond the city gates. That's the place where they eulogize the person. If you have that many men, then you don't have to stop your learning, even for Hitzas HaMes. Now, Sheshis he says a much larger amount. He says, Kinesinasa. Just like the Torah was given, Kafnetilasa, that's the way it's taken away. Meaning when the person passes away, it's like as if another ice in the Torah, like another person he's leaving. So man is in us, but just like the Torah is given with 600,000 people, so too it's taken with 600,000 people. So that's how many people you have to say that we have the requisite amount of people at the Levaya. Now, it says the Gemara Hanamili, when do we say this? Is Laman the Kari B'Tanim, someone who learned Chumash, learned Mishnayos. That's how much we say, okay, if you have 600,000, you don't have to stop learning for him. Av Laman the Masli, someone who taught others, less than shiur, then there's no measurement. Then even more than 600,000, you still have to go to the Levaya. Which Tracer points out, so it sounds like from this that someone who didn't learn Chumash and didn't learn Mishnayos, we spoke about someone who's Kari B'Tani, he's 600,000. We spoke about someone that taught, there's no limit. But let's say someone didn't learn Chumash and didn't learn Mishnayos, sounds like that there would be a shiur, and you wouldn't stop your learning for him, only according to how much you literally need people to be involved to actually do the actual Levaya itself. That's all for Bittul Torah, says Taisa. But regarding stopping your work, that the whole people in the city has to stop for any Levaya. So the difference between you're busy working or busy learning. I always tell people all the time, what?
According to this, a big city, and every day is a
right. So that's what the person can talk about. The person can talk about that. The reason is that people should be involved and you have to have the city members, but if you have the Chevra Kadisha, so therefore that's why we don't do it. But I tell people all the time that people say, he couldn't come to L'chasna because he had a big business deal, a few $1 million. I go, what do you mean? Issa Malacha, what do you mean? Do you see in this Gemara, people learning Torah, you want me to come and I'm doing nothing? I could come, and this guy has a $6 million deal that's on the table. Of course he couldn't come, or he couldn't come. Bittul Malach is less than Bittul Torah. Bittul Torah, we don't stop for anything. So that's what we're saying. There's 3 madregas of someone doesn't learn Chumash or doesn't learn Mishnah. Him, whatever you need to take care of, the basics. And then there's someone that learns Chumash and Mishnah. So him, you have to have 600,000. And then someone that taught, it's unlimited. You have to go to Levi. Tell you, learn the Brisa. Shimon ben Yochi Oima, he says, come and see how dear are the Jewish people in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Why? Wherever they went into exile, the divine presence was with them. Golu Mitzrayim, they went to exile to Egypt, the divine presence was with them. It says the pasuk in Shmuel Aleph. It says that Hashem says, I revealed myself to your father's household when they were in Egypt, etc., in Beis Paroi. So it's actually what I spoke about yesterday on Boil Paroi, come to Paroi. Hashem was like, what do you mean, boy, go? Hashem said, oh, I'm here. All the tzar is, ich bring this, don't worry, anich about this, boy. You're supposed to be hisalalti bin Mitzrayim, you're supposed to laugh in Mitzrayim because that's where the Shekhinah is. The Rebbeinu Shalom comes with you. Don't be afraid of the difficulties. So to Gula Bubble, when they went to Gullus and Bubble, Shekhinah, the divine presence was with them. Shekhinah says the pasuk in Yeshaya. It says, so says Hashem, your Redeemer, the holy ones of the Jewish people, Amanchem shilachti bavela. For your sake, I sent to Bubble, but it could be read like Shulachti, I was sent to Bubble. Now, the censor takes out a lot from the Talmud Bavli, and some Gemaras add in what was edited by the censors, where it says, it's a Gola Edom. The Jewish people went to Edom, which is where we're in right now, in the Western, and the Shekhinah is with them. It brings a pasuk in Yeshaya, Miza bo me Edom, Chametz b'Godim, that the Rebbeinu Shalom is there also with us in the current Golas. And also in the future when they're going to be redeemed, Shekhinah, the divine presence with them also. Hashem, in the bottom. Hashem, your God, will return with the captives, because it doesn't say he will return, el b'shav, which is like he's going to return. HaKadosh Baruch comes to teach HaKadosh Baruch himself returns with the exiles, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu goes with us wherever we go into Gullus. So the Gemara says, Bebavel Heicha. So and the reason why we're bringing this teaching is because related to the halachas of our previous daf regarding the kedusha, the basic knesses of a shul, as we were told about what he allowed to sell a shul for. So this is where it relates back to that idea, because the Gemara is asking, so the Shekhinah is with us in Gullus Bavel when we're here in Talmud Bavli. Where in Bavel is the Shekhinah? So Mabai says it's Bebei Kanishta the Hutzel. It's in the shul in Hutzel. Or Bebei Kanishta the Shaf Yosef in Ardah. There's an interesting shul in Ardah called Shaf Yosef. Shaf means destroyed, and Yosef means that it was rebuilt, because Yechanya and those who went into Gullus with him, they took from the stones and the earth from Eretz Yisrael with them into Gullus Bavel to fulfill what the pasuk says in Tehillim, that your servants, they love your stones and your earth. So they actually took the earth from Eretz Yisrael and they went and they built a shul in Ardah. So these two shuls, Hutzel and Shav Yosef and Ardah, they have the Shekhinah in them here in Gullus Bavel. Now, Beloitim says the Gemara, don't say hacha that it's in both. Sometimes it's in this shul, sometimes it's in that shul, but that's where the Shekhinah is in Bavel. Abai says, tastily, it should come to me as a reward. When I'm parsa away from one of these two shuls, even though very far, I go and I make the journey and I go and I daven over there, because that's where the Shekhinah is in Bavel. Now, Abu Deshmu Levi, one time these two Torah giants have a Yasser B'Kanishta, the Shafa Yasser and Ardah. They were sitting in that shul of Shafa Yasser and Ardah. And as the Shekhinah, the divine presence came, because like we said, sometimes it's natural, sometimes this shul. Shamu kol rigsha, they heard a tumultuous noise, because the Shekhinah was there. Come up enough, because they got up and they left. Now Rav Sheshes, on the other hand, who he was blind, he was sitting in the shul of Shavah Yosem Adah, and Asher Shekhinah, the divine presence came, but enough, he didn't leave. So also Malach Hashor, so the ministering angels came, and they were bothering him. So he said in front of Hashem, everybody shall master the world. When you have olav v'she'ein olav, if you have someone who's forlorn and someone who's not forlorn, meaning someone who's degraded, that's Rav Sheshes, who's blind, and you have those who are not forlorn, which are the malachim. Who gets pushed away in front of the other one? Because the Rebbeinu Shalom always likes the olav, hanelav and ve'enim olavim. So Hashem said to the malachim, Shavku, leave him alone, because he is the olav, he's the forlorn one, and therefore he could stay over here in the shul, even though the Shekhinah is trying to come. The Gemara brings a related pasuk in Yechezkel. Pasuk says, so therefore says Hashem, Master of the world, that I have distanced them in the nations, I have scattered them in all the lands, and the Elam the Mikdash Ma'at. So although the Jewish people are dispersed throughout the world, I'm going to be for them as a small temple, as the pasuk there says, in the lands that they're going to come to. What does that mean? So a well-known teaching, what's a Mikdash Ma'at? This refers to the shuls and Bat Midrash in Babel. It's like a small temple. It's like the base of Mikdash, a minor one on the micro in throughout the Gullus. Rabbi Lazami says a different shot. Says this is the house of our teacher, meaning Rav in Babel. That's the Mikdash Ma'at. Darash Rava expounds, and these are all on the same theme about the Kedusha basic Knesses. Ma'idach said, wasn't it a pasuk in Tehillim that starts off Tefillah LaMoshe, and it's talking about davening, Isha Likim, the man of God, and it says with Hashem, Mo'in Ata Yisulam, Hashem, an abode, meaning like a dwelling, you are for us in every generation. What does this refer to? Elabatik and says about the midrashas, because talking about Tefillah is talking about the shuls and about midrashas. That's what Hashem is. He's a ma'oin for us in a shul in the base of Medrash. That's where we go to be with Hashem. Amar Abaye says, Mireish, in the beginning, have a good isna of a base. I would learn in my house. I could have a clear head. What's lean to be knish, then I would daven in shul. Even the Sham is the Holy Komadava. Once I heard this, that David Melch says in Tehillim, Hashem, ahavti mo'in besach. Hashem, I love the, and it says the same word again, mo'in over here, the dwelling of your house. So I realized how precious is a shul. So I was learning in the shul. I didn't just learn at home. I learned in the shul because, again, how beloved is the dwelling of a shul. He says, a well-known teaching, it's going to be that all the shuls and all the midrashim in Babel, so that they're all going to be established in Eretz Yisrael. Now the source, because it says a pasuk in Yirmiyah, says Ki Ketavar Baharim Uka Carmel, just like Tavar and Carmel, which were two big mountains, and Pari was Beyam Yavai, Pari came into the sea. It's talking about what happened by Yitzis Mitzrayim, by Matan Torah. But one thing we learned from there is that Har HaCarmel passed over the sea. When was that? That was the time of Matan Torah, where they wanted to come, that the Torah should be given on them. They all came over there. Now, it's a Kabbalah Chaymer. Matavar v'Carmel. If these two mountains Shalei they only came Elafi Shalom Materah, only came momentarily for to learn Torah. Nikvam Eretzon, still they were established. Now they're part of Eretz Yisrael. So, but can see so but midrash shekoyrin and marbitzim and Torah, so shuls and but midrashim where they read and they disseminate words of Torah. All the more so, like we have over here, the shul will be ultimately rebuilt in Eretz Yisrael. Now, related discussion to these mountains coming by Matan Torah. So Dorish Bakapar, again from Bakapar expounded. He said, "Ma'idach, there wasn't in pasuk in Tehillim. It says, Lama Taratztun. Why do you dance Harim Gavnunim? These high mountains, because like the pasuk says over there, the mountain that Hashem desires to settle on, also Hashem is going to want that it'll rest on that for eternity. So what's the pasuk saying? How many boys came out and said to the other mountains that the word Taratztun is a compound? Is Lama Tirtzu Did. So it's two words. Why do you want to litigate in Sinai like as if you're going to handle with Sinai? That like to say that the mountain that Torah should be given on you. You're all considered blemished in regards to Mount Sinai. Why? It says over here that the mountains were Gavnunim. So what does Gavnunim mean? It says over there, passing in the Yikra, the same word, there it means or long eyelashes. oidak or cataract, we're talking about the mumen that there are, these are considered mumen. So Amar Rav Ashi says, Shema Minah, what we could infer from this is Haiman Diyahar, whoever is arrogant, because that's really what the simpler translation of Haram Gavnunim were these big mountains. But you see that the word Gavnunim also means a blemish, so Ba'amumu. We see that if someone's arrogant, it's a blemish, and that was a blemish of these mountains that Lomatitsu did. What are you going to litigate? Har Sinai is a humble mountain, therefore you're nothing compared to it, you're blemished because of your arrogance. The Mishnah said, going back to the halacha of our Mishnah, talking about, we had the Kedushas basic Knesset we were talking about, we said, you can't make a shul into a shortcut. And this is even if it was destroyed already. It says, what's kapadraya? It says kapadraya kishma. It's like its name, like the simple translation. It says, what does that mean? What's the simple translation of kapadraya? So the Gemara says that it's a compound word. Command almost like someone who says, ademekifna adori, that's kapadraya. Ademekifna, which means to say, instead of me going around adori, around these row of houses, I'll cut through this house over here. I'm going to make a shortcut from one alleyway to another one, and the shul is between them. But you don't want to go around the whole block into somebody's yard over there. Instead of me going around the row of townhouses, I'm going to cut through here. That's what a kapatrai is, and that's what you now use a shul for. You have a shul that's between two different dead ends, and if you wanted to go to your house, you have to go all the way around. But if you cut through the shul, you can go straight through. That you're not allowed to do. Now, however, Rabbi says, if this was always a path before the shul was built, and then you build a shul on the shortcut, on that path, then you're allowed to continue using that shortcut even though you're going through the shul. Additionally, Rav Nachman Yitzchak, he says, if you went into shul not to make it into a shortcut, then then you could make it into a shortcut. You came in for whatever it is to learn this, and then you decide to leave and you want to walk out the other way, that's okay. And he says, actually, let's say not you didn't come in for a shortcut, you actually came in to daven, then mutter, or actually, as the Vilna Gaon brings down the Girsa, is that actually mitzvah. It's actually a mitzvah to make it into a, so to speak, a shortcut by leaving the other side. Because Hashem says, the pasuk in Yecheskel, Hashem says, that when the people of the land come in front of Hashem on the Yom Tovim, so whoever comes through the northern gate to bow down, should go out the southern gate. Now, why does Hashem want that? Because Hashem wants you to traverse His temple. He wants you to come and use the whole temple complex. So if you came in the north, leave on the south. So too in the shul, if you came into daven, then it's like a mitzvah to go ahead and go through the whole shul and have that full experience. And therefore, again, either it's a mitzvah or, like we said, at least mutter, you can make it into a shortcut. Now the Mishnah said, Alubay Asavim, if let's say grass started growing in this destroyed shul, so you shouldn't rip it out. And they agmas nefesh, because you want people to say, what's this? Remember, there used to be a beautiful shul over here, now it's destroyed, there's grass growing over here, you leave the grass. It says, Gemara, but we're talking in the Bryce that says, you're not allowed to tear the grass and give it to eat. But you could tear it out and you could leave it over there. So what are you saying? You can't rip it out? The Bryce says you could rip it out, just leave it over there. Says the Gemara, right? One with our Mishnah is we were saying you can't tear it out and then give it to your animals to eat, but you could, or if you want to eat some grass yourself, but you can't. That's what we're saying you can't do. But to leave it there, that you could do. Which one? By the grass that's there? I mean, if it's laying over there, it sounds like that would be also, the grass is still there. But to use it, which it sounds like the only using would be eating it, I don't know if the word is eating, it's that the word is like you're taking it away. If you leave the grass over there, it's still, I don't know, I mean, you have all the cut grass, and most people don't cut their grass and leave it over there because it still looks messy. Why would a person tear it out? I don't know, but it sounds like that you could leave it. If you leave it over there, it's you get your lawn mowed, you don't leave the grass over there, right? It still looks disheveled, it still looks disorganized. That's what it sounds like. But if you went and you took it and you gave it to eat, then it would be clean, and then people wouldn't have agmas nefesh that's laying around over there. So similarly, talking about within the brisa, related to the halacha like a shul, it's so to a basic kvaras. A basic kvaras, a cemetery, ain't no giving kalas reish. You're not supposed to act lightheaded in the cemetery, no joking around over there. Ain't man ben behema, you're not allowed to let animals come and graze over there, where you have some good grass over there. It's like Tais says, it's not appropriate for the covenant of the mason. But actually, Tais says that there's trees, actually, you're allowed to take fruits from there, because that has nothing to do with the covenant of the mason, because it's not on the grave itself. But regularly, animals to graze over there, you're not allowed to do that. You can't have a stream that you need to have the canal. Let's say they're making a canal in the community. Now have to go through the cemetery. You can't be picking nice flowers over there. If you did gather stuff from them coming, you burn it over there in the place. Again, they covered mason because of the dignity of the dead people. So the Gemara says, wait a second, what's this they covered mason going on? If it's going on the last halacha, like it sounds like the way we read it, Kivin Shesarfan, once you're burning it in the place, my covered mason maker, what type of cover of the mess is there by burning the flowers that you picked over there? So the Gemara says, no, it's going on the Reisha, meaning when we said that you should, the first halacha that says you shouldn't act kalas reish, be joking around with someone by the lavai over there, that's mishum kavod shel mason. That's what we said, that's the dignity of the dead person. It's not appropriate to go ahead and be joking around, acting lightheaded by the cemetery. It's not appropriate for the dignity of those who have passed on. We're going to look at the next Mishnah, continuing on the theme of the reading of the Megillah. Now we're going to discuss that of the Dal Parshias. Says the Mishnah, Rosh Chodesh Adar shechalis b'Shabbos. If Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out to be on the Shabbos, so according to Parsha Shkolim, so that's the day that you read Parsha Shkolim, so that people should know that they should bring their Shkolim in this month of Adar, so that they could bring on the next month, the first of Nisan, from the new Trumos of the Shkolim, like the Gemara is going to tell us. Now, what's the Chalis B'Teicha Shabbos? What happens if Rosh Chodesh Adar, like I think it does on this year, falls out during the week? So Makdim L'Sha'avar. So then you do it on the previous Shabbos. Shabbos Shkolim is the Shabbos before Rosh Chodesh Adar, and then Mafsik L'Shabbos Acheres. Then you're not going to have exactly 4 weeks. So then you're going to stop the coming Shabbos from saying the second parasha, because we want to have the parasha Zachar should be the Shabbos that's closest to Purim, so that you could have Mechias Amalek and Mechias Haman right near each other. That's what the parasha Zachar is, wiping out the memory of Amalek, and the Megillah is wiping out the memory of Haman. Now, B'Shnia, the second parasha, obviously it's not the second week in that case, but the second parasha is parasha Zachar, to remember what Amalek did to you. The Shlisha is in the third parasha is Para Duma, which is the red heifer, which is to warn the people to be tahar, to purify themselves, because the next month is Nisan, and we want them to bring the Karban Pesach in a state of purity, which if you have Tumas Mess, you have to go ahead and be sprayed with the ash water of the red heifer. And Revi'is, in the fourth week of the Dal Parashas, is Achidish Zelechem, that this month should be for you, where there talks about the parasha, which we just had this last week's parasha, Parashat Boy, Achidish Zelechem, which talks about the parasha of Karban Pesach, which is what we're doing here in the last parasha of Parashas Achidish, which is right when the month of Nisan is coming. Now the Gemara, the Yerushalmi actually asked and says, wait, the truth is you should have had Parashas Achidish before Parashas Parah, because what's Parashas Achidish? Parashas Achidish is when you have the new Karbanis, Achidish Lechem, Rish Chodashim, you start your new Karbanis of the new month of the new year. That was the Mishkan was erected on the first of Nisan. It was only on the second of Nisan that they actually burnt the Paraduma. So why did we have Parashas Parah before Parashas Achidish? The Paraduma was actually done on the second of Nisan. The Mishkan was erected on the first of Nisan. So we actually should have Parashas Achidish first. Yeah, it talks about later on and with Karban Pesach. So I understand why you're saying it, but Lamaisa, we also learn out the Karban is being brought the first of Nisan from that pasuk too. So that should be read first and then Parashas Parah. So that says the Yerushalmi, because Lamaisa, it's the Taharasan Shal Yisrael. The Parashas Parah is about the purification of Jewish people, and therefore we have it first, because Tahara, we always want to have Tahara first, and therefore we read Parashas Parah before we read Parashas Achidish. Now, B'chamish is the fifth week, Chayzon L'Kesidron, we go back to the regular order of how it was up until now. Now the Mishnah says, L'chol Mafsikim. We stopped reading from the Inyana D'Yoyma, meaning from the topic of that normal schedule, and you read the topic of the Moyadois, meaning whatever event is happening, that's what you make the laning about. So to B'Rosh Chodashim, if let's say it's Rosh Chodesh, you change the Kriyas Torah to Rosh Chodesh. The Chanukah of Purim, if it's Chanukah or Purim, the tiniest of fast, and by Mamodos, and by Mamodos, which we said the laning they had on those days would be Ma'aser V'Reishis, as the Mishnah teaches later on the next Daf, Lav Beis, will be Yom Kippurim, which Taisa says when we're talking about Yom Kippurim, we have to be talking about Mincha of Yom Kippurim, which if it's on Shabbos, although generally Shabbos by Mincha we lane the Parasha HaShavua, if it's Yom Kippurim, we read the Parasha of Arayas. And all of them really are talking about like a weekday type of laning, because if you would be talking about Shachris, then every Yom Tov you would have to mention. Why do I have to mention Yom Kippurim? We're talking about actually the Mincha. Yom Kippurim is unique that we lane by Mincha, and that Kriya would override the Kriya of the Parasha Shavua. If it's Yom Kippurim is on Shabbos, you wouldn't lane that week's Parasha, you would lane that of Yom Kippurim, which is the Parasha of Arayis. Now, a related discussion to Allah about Mishnah, we said the first of the Dalet parashas is Parashat Shkolim. So it's not hospital. We're into the Mishnah Masechet Shkolim that talks about this idea. Why are we reading Shkolim? What's Shkolim here on the first of Adar? Is Be'echad Ba'adar Mishmin al Shkolim. This is not the same thing that we're talking about in our Mishnah. Our Mishnah is commemorating by reading Parashat Shkolim. This Mishnah Shkolim is talking about in actual Mishnaic times when they actually had a Beis HaMikdash. So the first of the Adar, they would make an announcement regarding the Shkolim. The Bezdin would make an announcement, and as we continue to Beis, meaning that everyone should bring their Shkolim. And on the Beis Valakleim, they would also make an announcement on the first of Adar that you should rip out, if you have any forbidden mixture of seeds, which are recognizable amongst the grain that's growing right now, that everyone should watch out and tear out those Kleim. So the Gemara says, Bishlam Valakleim, I understand why in the first of Adar they would make an announcement regarding the Kleim, because there's Manzri, it's a time of planting, which Tais points out, it's not really at the time of planting, because that's actually much earlier. Rather, what the Gemara means to say is, it's the end of the time of planting, which things are already starting to sprout. So therefore, I understand why you tell me everyone should look out for the climb, because look in your field, things are starting to sprout, you can notice if there's a forbidden mixture. Ela Shkolim, but where do we know that in the first of Adar, we make this announcement that everyone should come and bring the Machzah Shekel to give for the Karbanos of that year? So I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be He says, because the Pasuk says in Mamidbar, Zoyis Oilas Chaydish B'Chadshai. This is the Oila, the totally burnt sacrifice, of the month, B'Chadshai, at its renewal, and actually the pasuk even continues with more words of Chaydish, L'Chadshei Hashem, to the month of the year. So as Rashi points out, the Gemara's question is, why do you say the word Chaydish so many times? So I'm going to tell you, the Torah is telling you like this: Chadesh, renew, L'Havi Karban Mitruma Chadasha, and bring a carbon from the new Truma, meaning to say there is a month, a Chaydish, that you have to be Machadish it with the bringing of the Oilos of the Tmidim and the Mesafim from the new Truma. Which month is that? That's Nisan. How do we know it's actually Nisan? Because the Gemara tells in Rosh Hashanah, we learn like Zeh Shava, it says the word Shana over here, it says the word Shana from Nisan, where it says, we had in last week's parasha, Rishon Hu Lechem L'Chadshei Hashana. So it says over the word Shana, and it's talking about the first month, which we know that's talking about Nisan, which is when the Yidden were taken out of Mitzrayim. So, V'kiven de Nisan B'Yakruv Mitzrayim Chadash. So says the Gemara, okay, so since we know that in Nisan, you have to bring the Karbanos from the new Truma, that's what we're learning from this pasuk of it says Eilas Chaydish B'Chadshai. So Kadminan V'Kardinan V'Echav Adar. So we go before and we read, we make an announcement, or we read in the first of Adar, people should bring their shkom to the Beis HaMikdash. You got a month's time that you'll be able to bring your thing, and they'll be able to buy the kabbans, and the first of Nisan they'll be able to bring from the new Machzah Shekels or whatever was left over from last year. That's called the Beis HaShkom. They use it for other things. It says Gemara, Kaman, who's this like that says that you're going to go so early, a month before, to get people to bring the Machzah Shekel for that the first of Nisan should have it? So it's Gemara, it's not like Rav Shimon Gamliel. Why? Because the Rav Shimon Gamliel, he says Shtei Shabbosos. You don't need a month time before something. You need only 2 weeks before. The time we learn the Brisa, Shoylin B'Hilchas HaPesach, Koyin LaPesach. How much before Pesach do you start already asking and preparing for Pesach? So Shleishim Yom, 30 days before. Like all the women, right after Purim, that's it. No more chumetz in the house, we're cleaning up. The asik take for the Yom Tov is how much you have to prepare. That's the time to come. Shimon says, no, Shtei Shabbosos, 2 weeks before. Okay, let's wait for Shchodesh Nisan. Then we'll start preparing, no more chumetz, start asking to do all the shilas. We have to scrub the oven in the back and the front. But we see Salak Shimon Gamliel, because according to him, you wouldn't have to make the announcement on Rosh Chodesh Adar. You would make it on the 15th of Adar. Says Gemara, no. I felt Timur Shimon Gamliel. Kimon says like Shimon Gamliel. How so? Because since the master says that B'chamisha Asabai on the 15th of Adar, then Shulchanas, the money changers, who would swap people's shkalim for silver coins, they would make it the money changers. Yeshu B'Medina. That's when they would start sitting. They would open up their tables. These pop-open stores, whatever they call them, you make this, and then there's these guys making all this money. The money chain, he knows it's the right season. And the 25th is when they already start sitting in the Beis HaMikdash. That's a sign already that, okay, it's already time to make your Trumas Alishka, which is going to be, they have to take it. They have to first get the money from all the boxes, and they have to take 3 boxes off, and they have to quickly bring, because in a few days, they have to already have the animals to go ahead and bring them on the 1st of Nisan. So once on the 25th of Adar, they would already be in the Mishkan, no more tables open up in the countryside anymore, and they would start taking collateral from those who didn't bring it on the 25th of Adar. But one thing is, we saw that on the 15th is when they open up their tables, so Mishum Shulchanis come in B'Kardina. The reason why we start reading and start making announcements on the 1st of Adar, because that's 2 weeks before the money changers. So it is 2 weeks before, not 2 weeks before you actually have to bring the karbanis, but 2 weeks before, it's like I have this always when we're flying. When it says the time of the flight, that's when they're taking off. That's not boarding time. That's when they're leaving. It means they close the gate sometimes before. So we can't. Don't look at that time. Look at a different time. It's called boarding time, not takeoff time. So saying 2 weeks before what? Not 2 weeks before when they're bringing the karbanos. It's already very tzishveit. They already boarded. Already did the trumas. Already did the whole thing. 2 weeks before the shulchanis is when we start making an announcement that people know. Okay, that's time to bring it. So it could be like Rabbi Shloimy Gamliel, because it's not 2 weeks before when they bring it. 2 weeks before when the shulchanis are set up. Okay. So says the Gemara, my parsha shkolm. What is parsha shkolm? Literally, it's translated the parsha, the topic of the shkolm, of the coins. But what parsha is that? So Rav Amma, it's actually machlekes. Rav says it's the parsha in Sefer Bamidbar that says Tzavos b'nei Yisrael v'amart aleim, Parshas Pinchas, command the Jewish people and tell them as korban lachmi, which we know this very well. We learned this on the Rosh Chodesh, is the parsha of the korban of the Tamid. That parsha is what you read on Parsha Shkolm. Shmuel, he says, no, it's what we know very well because this is what we paskin, is Parsha Shkolm, is in Sefer Shemais, and Parsha Kisisa, which talks about when you're going to collect the Shkolm from the people. So the Gemara says, yeah, Bishlam Madam Kisisa, I understand the one who says that it's Parsha Kisisa, and the Kurla Parsha Shkolm, that's why I call Parsha Shkolm. The Chsib Shkolm, it says over there, that it's all about the Shkolm over there, when they were collecting, when they were making the Mishkan. But Alman Da'am is coming to Lachmi, according to Rab, that says you read the parsha of the carbon of the Tamid, and the Girsa takes the word Hacha, Midi Shkolm Ksivi Hasam. What does it say anything about Shkolm over there? Why would you call it parsha Shkolm? So he's going in, yes. Because time Mamai, what's the reason why we bring Shkolm? In the month of Adar, is Kedirab Tavi, is that we could bring the Karbanas on the first of Nisan from the new Truma. That mitzvah of the Karbanas of the Tamid is written over there. So that is the parsha Shkolm. The Parsha Shkolm is that you could have the animals that you bring every single day. You carbon Talmud B'Shachar and Talmud B'Erev. So therefore we read the Karbanis of the carbon Talmud, which is the purpose of the Shkolm, and therefore we call that as Parsha Shkolm. So now we're going to ask the other way. So we understand according to Rab that says you read the Parsha of the Talmud. That's what's called Parsha Shkolm, because it has the Karbanis over there. That's what the Shkolm are used for. That's Kedem Tavi. But according to the one that says Parsha Shkolm is Parsha Kisisa, Karbanis Miksivi, does it say Karbanis over there? Shkolm Ladana Miksivi. When it says over there the Shkolm, when they were collecting people's monies, that was for a whole different purpose. The pasuk says over there, you should take the money of the Talmud and you're going to put it al avodas al moed. You know what Shkolm those are? Those are Shkolm that they made the sockets of the Mishkan, like it says over there, V'kesef b'kudei eda, where ma'as kikar kesef l'tzekes is on their kodesh. So what Shaykh is, yeah, mention Shkolm over there. That Shkolm wasn't for what our Shkolm is for. Our Shkolm is for Karbanis. That Shkolm was for the Adanim. So why would you even read that Parsha of Shkolm? So the Gemara could tell it Rav Yosef, because Rav Yosef taught a Brisa. It says, no, although it's not explicit in the Pasuk, there were actually Sholish Trumas in. There were 3 Trumas that were said over there. And if you read the Pasuk, it says 3 times the word Truma. It says, Machzah Shekel Truma L'Hashem Yitin. It says Trumas Hashem, and it says Losses is Trumas Hashem. Why I say 3 times the word Truma? Because actually with 3 different collections. There was Shemizbeach LaMizbeach, which is the one we're talking about. That they actually gave towards the Mizbeach to purchase Karbanas and Tzibur for the whole year. That's what actually means the Chapa Nafshasechem. What's the Chapa Nafshasechem? Not Dalma, not a Kapara. No, the Kapara, the Karbanas that were buying from the Master Shem that every single year gave for the Karbanas of the Mizbeach. Then there was what's more explicit in the Pasuk B'Shalat Don Ladanim. You're right, they also collected from every single person on Master Shem to give for the sockets. And B'Shal Bedek Abayis and Bedek Abayis, then there was actually a 3rd collection, which was for the temple treasury, for the financial office of the Beis Hamikdash, which that wasn't equal everyone. Everyone gave according to what he wanted to donate. That's what the pasuk means when it says V'yivoyu hanoshim al noshim, kol hadivlei, whoever was generous, he gave. That was the 3 different types of collection. So it's not difficult while we read Parsha Shkolm and Parsha Kisisa, because one of the 3 Shkolm, although it's not explicit, was that of the Karbanis, which are what our Shkolm is for. The Gemara continues to ask, we understand according to the one who says that Kisisa is the parsha you read on Parsha Shkolm. So when you have Rosh Chodesh Adar that falls out on Shabbos, which we said, if Rosh Chodesh Adar falls on Shabbos, you're going to read Parsha Shkolm then. So Hainu Deshani, I understand what you're changing in the Kriyas HaTorah, Hay Rosh Chodesh, Mishar Rosh Chodashim. Because a regular Rosh Chodesh, you read the parsha of Karban Tamid, of Tzavos Bnei Yisrael, and now you're changing, you're saying in the Mishnah, you read Parsha Shkolm, which is Parsha Kisisa. But according to Rav that said that what is Parsha Shkolim is the Parsha of the Karban Tamid. Then my Shani, what are you changing? You tell me when Chodesh Adar falls out to be on Shabbos, oh, you read Parsha Shkolim. Every Rosh Chodesh that falls out on Shabbos, you read the Parsha of Rosh Chodesh, of Parsha Tamid, which is a Shabbos B'nai Yisrael, Amat Lem is coming Lachmi. So what are you changing when you read Parsha Shkolim? Says, no, Shani, you are changing. You know why? Because the Ilu Rosh Chodashim on the regular Rosh Chodesh that falls on Shabbos, Karushita Binyana Diyema, at least in the way the Talmud is saying it over here, that you would read 6 aliyahs of that the Parsha Hashavua. The Shvi would get and read in the next Sefer Torah and Rosh Chodesh. But now, when it's Parsha Shkolim, Kula B'Rosh Chodesh, all 7 aliyahs are from the Parsha of Rosh Chodesh. Because that's Parsha Shkolim. So it's different than Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh, usually we don't override the whole Kriyas HaTorah of the Parsha Shavua. We only get the last aliyah. Now we're reading the whole thing. That's why we're saying we're calling it Parsha Shkolim, because it's different than regular Rosh Chodesh. Says, well, wait a second. That interpretation, that's very well according to the one that says in the Perek that when we said in our Mishnah, we just read on Naman Alf, that in the 5th week, there's 4 parashas. The 5th week, you go back Likisidron. What does it mean you go back to the regular order? Back to our regular broadcast. What is that? Let's say the Parsha Chayzer. That means to say, because these 4 weeks of the Dal Parashas, you actually stopped reading the Kriyas HaTorah of that week's Parsha. And when we're saying you're going back to the regular order, now that we're going to go back to the regular Parsha Hashavua. Okay, then you could say like you're answering that regular Rosh Chodesh, you only give Shvi. Now, but when it's Parsha Shkolim, all the aliyahs are going to be from Rosh Chodesh. So that makes sense, like you're saying, like your answer. Because we would stop reading the Kriyas HaTorah, we'd only do the Parsha of Shkolim. So that's different. All the 7 aliyahs are from Rosh Chodesh, not just the Shvi. Like you're answering, what's the difference? But Al-Mandam, according to the one who says, let's say the Haftarah Su Chayzer, that Mandam explains when we say Chayzer L'Kisidron, it doesn't mean for that of the Kriyas HaTorah. You only went back for the regular order of the Haftarahs, because the Haftarahs are what you switched. But the Parsha Hashavua, you didn't switch. So then, Parsha the Yomikarin, that means to say that throughout the Dal Parashas, you are reading the Parsha, but like we do. We don't switch the whole Kriyas HaTorah. So my Shanim, again, what are you changing from regular Chodesh? Just like regular Chodesh, you give the last aliyah, so what that means to say here also, you're going to just give the last aliyah, because you're not switching the Kriyas HaTorah. So what's the difference between calling it Parsha Shkolim and the regular Chodesh that falls on Shabbos, that you also read the same Kriyas HaTorah? So the Rosh Hashanah, there is a difference. Why? Because when it's a regular Rosh Chodesh, like we said before, 6 aliyahs get from the Parsha Hashavua, and the 7th aliyah gets from Rosh Chodesh. But now you're right, although we're not totally being mevatel on the Parsha Hashavua, but only the first 3 aliyahs through Shlishi, they read from the Parsha Hashavua. But like on a regular weekday Rosh Chodesh, we give 4 aliyahs. We're going to take 4 aliyahs, I'm going to make that the Kriyas HaTorah of the Shabbos. So that's different. That's not like a regular Rosh Chodesh. That's only because it's Parsha Shkolim. That's such an important Parsha. That's why we're calling it Parsha Shkolim. But you're right. It's the same Kriyas HaTorah that we do on the regular Rosh Chodesh. But Mr. the Gemara continues to ask from the following Brisa. Brisa says, this case of Rosh Chodesh Adar Chalis b'Shabbos. If Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out to be on Shabbos, says the Brisa, Kodim b'Parsha Shkolim. So we're going to read the Parsha Shkolim like we said in our Mishnah. Umaftirin b'Yoda HaKoyin. This it didn't say in the Mishnah. It says, so what's the Haftarah? Haftarah is from Yoda HaKoyin. Oh, says the Gemara, so we understand according to Shmuel, who says that what's the Parsha Shkolim is Parsha Kisisa, that talks about the Shkolim. So it makes sense why the Haftarah always has to be from the theme of what Kriyas HaTorah was. So it makes sense that the Haftarah is Yoda HaKoyin, because it dominates the same. Because the Chsibit says over there in Malachim Beis, in this Haftarah of Yoda HaKoyin, says Kesef Nafshois Edkoin, the money of the evaluation of his soul, which is essentially what the Machzah Shekel is. Every single Jew has to give a kapara for his nefesh. So it makes sense. According to the one that says, like Rab, that the Kriyas HaTorah is the one the Parsha of the Karban Tamid, Midami doesn't say anything in that Haftarah about Karbanis. So why would that be the Haftarah? Obviously it's like Shmuel. So no, dummy, it is comparable, like we mentioned before, Kedirab Tavi. Because the Parsha of Zeis Oilis Chodesh B'Chodshei is talking about with how do you get your Karbanis? It's from Shkolim. So therefore, talking about Kesef Nafshas Erkoi, is comparable to the Karmat Tamid, because the Karmat Tamid is from your Shmachta shekels, which are a kapara of money for a person's life. The Gemara continues asking Mesa with the following brisa. Chal is, if Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out to be, the Parsha HaSemuchala, meaning the Parsha right next to Parsha Shkolm. So you can have Parsha Shkolm, and Rosh Chodesh Adar, meaning whatever Parsha Shkolm is, wherever it is from the Torah. It's not telling us, but we let's say we know it's Kisisa, but let's say that's what it says. If let's say the Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out to be in the Parsha right next to it, whether it falls out the week before that Parsha, or whether the week after, okay, so you'll read that Parsha, and the next Shabbos, even though you read it the previous Shabbos, because you read it because of either that was the Parsha Shavuot or because it was Parsha Shkolm, you'll read the same Kriyas HaTorah the next week too. So the Gemara says, okay, Bishlam Kisisa, we understand according to Shmuel that says what's Parsha Shkolm the way we learn Parsha Shkolm, which is Parsha Kisisa, Hainu de Misvemba, who's Zimna. That makes sense because Parsha Kisisa is around other time, which depending on the year, it could happen that it could be the week before, week after of Rosh Chodesh Adar. But according to what it says, it's the Parsha of Tamid. That could have happened at that time. It's a Parsha of Pinchas. It's summertime. It's by Chodesh Av. Nowhere near that of Rosh Chodesh Adar. So how can you say that it could be the week before, the week after the Kriyas HaTorah of that Parsha Shavuot? So we're in, yes, because it's Malabadei Madrava. This price we're talking about for the people in Eretz Yisrael. The Maski the Deraisa, that actually they would finish the Chamisha Chumashim once in every Beklashnin, once every 3 years. They didn't do like we do. They didn't have the Simchas HaTorah of finishing the Torah of once a year on Simchas Torah Parshas B'Zei Bracha on the end of Sukkot. They actually had a different way of cutting up and reading the Kriyas Torah every week. That they only finish actually once every 3 years, and therefore, according to their cycle, it's possible that you could have Parshas Pinchas around the time of Rosh Chodesh Adar, and it was not difficult on Rav, who says that Parshas Shkolm is the Kriya of Parshas Pinchas of the Karbonos of the Tamid. But it says the Gemara Tani Gabasei the Shmuel. There's a brayso that says like Shmuel the way we rule that's Parshas Kisisa. The brayso says clearly Rosh Chodesh Adar Shachalis b'Shabbos. According to Kisisa, the Kriya is Parsha Shkolm of Kisisa. Maftir beYoda Kohen, and that's the Haftarah of Yoda Kohen, which talks about, like we said, Kesef Nefshas Erko, which is talking about giving money as an atonement for your soul, which is what the purpose of the Shkolm were for. Gemara continues on the Bitzchul Nafla. It says, V'shchodesh Adar Shachalis b'Shabbos, which we were talking about all this time, as the case in our Mishnah, actually Mitzin Sholosh Torahs. We take out 3 Sifrei Torah. But when we read in them, what's 3 Sifrei Torah? Echad ben Yom Shel Yom, one is the Parsha Shabua. V'echad b'Shor Rosh Chodesh, one is because it's Rosh Chodesh too. V'echad b'Chisisa, and one is the Parsha of Kisisa, which is Parsha Shkolm. Related, another similar teaching, Mamre Bitzchel Nafla, says Rosh Chodesh Tevis Shachalis b'Shabbos, which is Bedel Chanukah time. If that falls on Shabbos, maybe in Shalosh Torahs, you also take out 3 Sifrei Torah, which is it's supposed to be a grace of skula to daven at that time. 3 Sifrei Torah, but when you read Echad ben Yom Shel Yom, one is again the Parsha Shabua. Echad ben Rosh Chodesh, one is Rosh Chodesh, which is the Parsha of Rosh Chodesh. Echad ben Chanukah, one's of Chanukah. Says the Gemara and B'tzricha. You needed to say these 2 teachings, which seem to be saying the same idea. Because the Yitma Baha, if we had only the teaching of Rosh Chodesh Teves, I would say Baha Kamen of Yitzchak. Maybe only there Rabbi Yitzchak says that you take out 3 Sifrei Torah. Abahach, but on Rosh Chodesh Adar that falls on Shabbos, maybe Karav Svirle, maybe holds a Grav. The Amar that he says Parsha Shkolm, what's the Parsha Shkolm? It says Korban Leilachmi, which is the same Kriyas HaTorah Rosh Chodesh. Rishtei Torah, therefore it would be enough to take out 2 Sifrei Torah. Kamash Malan, so we needed to say that you take out 3 Sifrei Torah because he holds like Shmuel. So it says the Gemara, B'lei Mahal, but why didn't you only say the teaching of Rosh Chodesh Adi take out 3? And I wouldn't need you to tell me the one of Tevis because the only one that was debated was Adar. Maybe you would need only 2 because you're like Rab. So say the one on Adar and then you'll know the one of Tevis. Says the Gemara, yeah, one was said as an inference of the other one, which tries to ask, okay, why do you have to say the inferential one if I know it from Adar? So Taisus know that the one who says he actually held like Rab, that if Rosh Chodesh Adar falls on Shabbos and you only take out 2 Sifrei Torah, would not know the one of Tevis. Therefore, he actually had to say the one of Tevis because he actually held it in Adar. He couldn't just say Adar because the one who said the teaching of Ritzchak Nafcha of 3 Sefer Torah and Tavis, he needed to say that one because he actually held in Ador you actually only take out 3 Sefer Torah. So you wouldn't know that there's times that you have to take out 3 Sefer Torah, therefore you have to say both teachings that these are times that you take out 3 Sefer Torah. Now, Idmar learned regarding this case of Rosh Chodesh Tavis Chalis B'chol. So we spoke about if it falls out on Shabbos, you take out 3 Sefer Torah. What happens if it's on a weekday? So what's the question? It's a weekday. There's 2 kriyas that you have. There's actually the Parsha Shavuot, which we're not going to do. But then there's also this Rosh Chodesh, and there's a Chanukah. You have Rosh Chodesh Tavis always is in the middle of Chanukah. So I mean, basically he says, the halacha is, Kodesh plus Rosh Chodesh is how we rule, that you read 3 from Rosh Chodesh, B'chad b'Chanukah, and you have the 4th Aliyah we'll get from that of Chanukah. He says no. Kodesh plus b'Chanukah, you read 3 Aliyahs like you do the rest of the days of Chanukah, B'chad b'Rosh Chodesh, and the 4th we'll read the kriyas of Rosh Chodesh. So I'm going to he says, it's more logical that the first 3 Aliyahs are Rosh Chodesh and the 4th is Chanukah. Why? Because the well-known Talmudic dictum of the Tada v'Sheina Tada. You have something that's more common and something that's less common, Tada Kaidim. And what's more consistent is that of you have the 12 Rosh Chodashim of the year, that takes precedence over the 8 days of Chanukah. Therefore, you'll do the Tada first, which is the first 3 will be of Rosh Chodesh and the 4th will be of Chanukah. But Amr Bavad, he disagrees. He says, no, it's logical that the first 3 Aliyahs will be of Chanukah and the 4th of Rosh Chodesh. Why? Because we don't generally have a Revi'i. On Chanukah, on the regular day of the week, we have 3 Aliyahs. Why are we having a 4th Aliyah? What's causing the 4th Aliyah is Rosh Chodesh. The fact that you're having a Revi'i is only appropriate to be. So if you're splitting it up and you're doing 3 and 1, why don't you do 1 and then 3? Good question. But that's like something we do 3 of the same one and the 4th one of a different one. It makes sense to do the 4th one of Rosh Chodesh. Says so what was the conclusion? Rabbi Yisrael says, we don't pay attention, meaning to make it the primary, Rosh Chodesh, meaning you don't make Rosh Chodesh the primary. Rather, the first 3 Aliyahs will be of Chanukah, and the 4th one will be of Rosh Chodesh. But Abbam says, no, you don't pay attention to Chanukah, meaning that's not the primary. The first 3 Aliyahs will be of Rosh Chodesh and the 4th of Chanukah. And the Hilchos Halacha is, Chanukah, yeah, we don't pay attention to Chanukah to make it the primary. And rather, Rosh Chodesh is the primary. First 3 Aliyahs Rosh Chodesh, and the 4th one is of Chanukah. Thank you to any time.